Welcome back to America Decides. Donald Trump had more than a dozen seasons of the TV show The Apprentice to cast himself as kind of a mega successful businessman, a great deal maker, and a super large and super important real estate tycoon. A new book claims almost all of that characterization and self-flattery is a lie. New York Times investigative reporter and Pulitzer Prize winner Russ Buettner joins us now. Russ is the co-author of Lucky Loser, How Donald Trump Squandered His Father's Fortune and Created the Illusion of Success. Russ, it's great to see you. I want to get to the book in just a second, but with your permission, I want to take a premise of the book, which is Trump has a lot of exaggerated claims, builds things up, buries information that would suggest that there was something illegitimate or handed off to him by someone else to keep information from the public, and when pressed, lies about that. Do you see any parallels in the things you describe in the book about Trump finances and business to what we're seeing today in the special counsel's assertion and assertions about January 6th?
I think that's a great comparison, Major. One of the things that attracted my co-author Suzanne Craig and I to doing this book is we had done several long articles for the New York Times about his business performance, about his inheritance. And it seemed like when you looked at all of that over the course of his life and his family's life and a succession battle within the family, emerged from that when the Donald Trump that we saw in the White House became that person. And yes, you do see very early on that he's exaggerating. He's actually just lying about projects that he's going to do that never happen. He's picking fights with people. When people oppose him, he dismisses them with sort of middle school insults. And he's all along that period of time, throughout the course of his adult life, trying to create this impression that he's independently wealthy, that his father was a small timer and that didn't give him much help at all, and that he created a fortune on his own. And that's sort of the arc of this book, is unraveling all of that and seeing Donald Trump become who we all recognized before he entered the White House.
Russ, one of the great and celebrated American archetypes is the self-made person, someone who has nothing and creates something through grit, determination, innovation, and the like. That has been part and parcel of how Donald Trump has presented himself to the world. But as I've read through the book and the materials that accompanied it, it's more father-made than self-made.
That's a great point. Actually, his father was the person you described. Fred Trump was the child of immigrants. He started working when he was in high school. He didn't really have many hobbies or pursuits while he was in high school. He just worked. And he took advantage through the course of his life of some government programs that were meant to solve the real big problems of the 20th century, the Great Depression, housing for veterans during the war, or for soldiers during the war, housing for veterans after the war. And he built a fortune, a real estate portfolio that by the time he died in 1999 was worth more than $1 billion. And Donald Trump benefited from the connections Fred Trump had created during his time building in New York City. He benefited from financial support. He benefited from his father introducing him to lenders and co-signing on loans. Didn't really do any of that on his own. And then after it all sort of went to pot under the weight of his own decision in the early 1990s, his own decisions, he tried to get back, build another sort of empire, and that wasn't going very well until Mark Burnett, a legendary now television producer, showed up and made him the star of The Apprentice and brought a whole nother windfall that allowed him again to create some businesses that looked like he was sort of omnipotent, but really when we see the financials of them, we're really struggling and being supported by his entertainment money.
Is there something, Russ, to, if not admire, at least take stock of with former President Trump? Because in the book and his life, as can be documented there and elsewhere, he is a frequent risk taker and talks lots of people into accompanying him on risks that they might not otherwise accompany other people on. True?
I mean, it's definitely true. He was a risk taker. I think people will come to their own conclusions about whether that was a positive trait. I wonder sometimes if when you're risking in really banks' monies, that was what he was generally playing with, was bank money, junk bond investor money for a lot of years, and then not repaying many of those loans. He was really risking his own money or someone else's.
Russ Buettner, thank you so much for your time. The book again, Lucky Loser.